I'd like to call the Governance meeting to order, please. First item of business is to accept the minutes from the January 19th, 2021. Need a motion to accept those minutes. So moved. Moved by Matt. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by John Roselle. Any omissions, corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. First one up is Matt Jones. Building and grounds updates.
Okay, so I guess I don't have a ton of updates this month because most of the stuff just happened at the recent board meeting. So everything's digesting now and moving forward. One item of business is the elevator upgrade at St. Paul's that took place last year in 2020, finished up. It's come to my attention that the resolution number 113 in March of 2020, we gave a cost that was approximately $90,000 to move forward with the project. The actual bid and price was $93,112. So I'm going to need either an amendment or something to bring $3,112 from the contingency over to the upgrade to just finish the bookwork on it. The project is done and completed.
Okay. So is that a new motion, Debbie, or is that an amendment?
He needs a budget amendment to move that forward. Yes.
So I need a budget amendment for $3,112 to bring that forward to finance.
Okay.
Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Paul Ferguson made a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by
It sounded like Mr. Ward, but he's not on your committee. Was it Losa?
Mr. Losa. Any further discussion?
Can we ask Al, is contingency the best account to take it out of Al, or should we look at something else?
Albert?
So this is out in the capital project. So it's the capital project contingency.
Okay. So the motion is for capital amendment, budget member $3,012 for the capital contingency project budget. And we have a motion and a second to go to finance. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. What else, Matt?
Okay, and then the next is really just a discussion to start thinking about. I know the bonding that we just approved or at the board meeting has to take place first, but I think the capital plan, by bonding that money, we were going to have money to do some other projects. I'd like to move forward as after the money's bonded with the rooftop units that we delayed from last year due to COVID and the money. So I don't know if I just wait till next month to move that along, or if I make a proposal here to move it to finance. I guess I'm looking for the process here.
Albert, what's your preference?
I don't see any harm in moving it to finance, and the bond the bond sale is on March 11th, so it'd still be, all of the closing would happen before the March board meeting, so we could always put the brakes on if something happened.
Yes,
move it.
Moved by Kathy. John, do you have a question?
Yes. Those rooftop units are for the Hudson Falls on the school, right?
No, these rooftops were for down at the jail. There was the series, we did 1 and 3, I think, we did 2 and 4. Now we're gonna do 1 and 3. They're the HVAC units.
Matt Hicks, you got a question?
Yeah, that was my question, Matt. There's 2 more to go, right? It's the one from last year that's already engineered.
Yes.
That you'll put out the bid and do this year, and then there's 1 more to go, which I believe is in, I don't know, 2023 or something like that, right? 2024?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And
Okay.
remember, each one is 2.
That's right.
Yes. Okay, the motion, did I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Paul. Any further discussion? This is moved to finance with a recommendation to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next, Matt?
That's all I have for updates. I don't know as if there, anybody wants any discussion on our tour of the buildings, the DPW buildings. I guess now would be a time to discuss them, or we can wait till DPW also. If there is any questions.
Matt?
So the next step we were gonna take in that, Matt, was, the consideration of the feasibility study, right? We were gonna send out for RFPs for that. Just give us an update on the timetable, where we are in the process.
We are in the process of trying to formulate an RFP that will get what we need for information. We haven't gone out, we haven't hired anybody. We're trying to formulate some stuff. We're gonna probably be calling, Sam and Dan and parties to try to get everything in there that everybody needs to be able to get a accurate scope of work.
So you'll put together an RFP for the scope of work. It'll go out, it'll come back, it'll have a price tag of whatever it is.
Yep,
And then we'll have to talk with the town to see how we're gonna move forward with that or not forward with that, and how we break it up, correct?
yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so it'll take some time.
Yeah, it's gonna take time. It's not just, I don't even think, our people have even read the stuff yet to go over it, but we will definitely be getting to you, probably between the 2 different committees, because I kind of both DPW and government ops are involved.
Dana Half? Unmute, Dana.
Matt, what would go out would include work on behalf of the towns. Is the county proposing to front end fund this? Until that?
At this point, it's our work, Dana. Building the RFP and the scope of work that we're looking for. When it goes out, when we send out the RFP and we get the numbers back, at that point, you would decide what percentage the town, would pay and what the county would pay.
Because up to that point, we have not spent any money, right?
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay. Dan Shaw?
Yeah, this is a unrelated subject, but it's for Matt. A year ago, Matt came to government ops and said that there was starting to become an issue with the building at Summit Lake for the intake of the water. I think it was for the village water, or some maintenance problem. Maybe it was where the old village water was. And for the last 3 years, I've been suggesting that we give that whole process, that whole property to the village and the town of Argyle. And Bob was acceptable to the idea. And Roger Wicks was going to get back to us now I mentioned it now 3 years in a row on the process to do it, because he said there was a lot of issues that had to be untangled there. And I've not heard a thing back on that matter. Have I missed it? Has there been any discussion on that by Roger on how we're going to move forward? Because it was starting to become a cost for the county that wasn't necessary, but since we owned it, we had to maintain it.
I guess I should leave my camera on so everybody could have seen the lack of the astonishment on my face when you called me out on that, Dan, because I have no recollection of that whatsoever. Arranging to do that, there's the things we have to untangle would be the arrangement of the village water that's already on there, and then the safety of the building. That was my understanding or my recollection of what the biggest problem was, is what was going to happen to that building, because it's in pretty decrepit shape. And Argyle wasn't all that interested in taking over that whole operation, was my understanding, but that hasn't ever, to my recollection, been on my radar screen. So
Matt?
The building is gone. We took it down. Us and DPW did that together. We've taken care of the safety issue. The issue is the water line, which I do know Roger knows about the water line. He could probably update on that more than the property, but the water line that feeds the nursing home's fire system, the county still owns it. And, you know, as far as we can tell, we have to try to maintain it, and it is aged. We'd like to get rid of that as soon as possible.
Right,
Well,
and
that's what you,
Larry
Go ahead.
Paltrowitz was working on that from probably 3 years ago when you started talking about it, Dan, ascertaining whether or not we could come to an agreement with the centers folks over there for them to either take it over or make alternate arrangements for the fire suppression system. And I've not heard from him in quite some time about that.
well, it's been over 3 years we've been talking about it, and I know that I only mention it once a year, and I'm not blaming anybody. It's just that it come to my mind again the other day. And I think that we need to get onto this and not let it go, because it's been 3 years with the center saying they weren't interested, and we're just sitting on this liability. And I know that Bob said that he was always interested, but it was the cost of taking care of things was what his concern was to his town. And I just think we need to stay on it.
So that doesn't serve the town of Argyle or the village of Argyle at all, that one line coming down to Centers, does it? Yes, Bob?
The line to Centers doesn't, but there is an emergency, emergency line that goes to the village water that comes from where that shack was. In fact, they used that this year with that filtration system and things. I think the only reluctance on the part of the town board to take all that was what the county's liability was on the line to PVI or to Centers. And if that was resolved, I think that's the issue we got to resolve.
So, Roger, would be a good idea for you to check back with Larry and circle back in the next governance meeting and formulate a plan to move forward if we can.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
We'd be excited for you to do that. Day and a half?
Roger, is there anything that forces the county to keep ownership of that parcel? If the centers aren't really talking to us about the sprinkler line, are we forced to retain ownership of the property?
That was the agreement. The purchase agreement was silent as to that issue. And in light of the business that they're in, I'd be really hesitant to say to you, turn off the tap and see what they say.
No, I mean, sell the property.
Oh, the property is a different issue than the water line. The water line just feeds down. We could sell the property, retain the I hate to use the word easement. We're talking a lot about those lately, but retain the pipeline that goes down to Centers. That those two things in my mind aren't really related to each other.
Because doesn't that water line, Roger, go right down through other people's property to Centers, to that pond down there?
Yeah, we have easements through all those properties to go down, which we could
So
choose to abandon.
We own the pipe, we don't own any property there.
Right.
Was it consideration to transfer that property to the town or the village also?
Which property?
The separate subject property?
I guess I'm confused. All we own now is the portion of the pipeline that's on our property and a pipeline easement going down to Centers. In my perfect world, not Argyle's perfect world, but my perfect world is I'd give all of that to Argyle and wish him the best of luck. I see the great glee on Mr. Henke's face and his anticipation of telling me no. So that would be the easiest solution for the county. Obviously, if that's not the thing, we'd have to maintain the pipeline and the easements until we figure out with Centers what we're going to do, whether they're going to come up with their own solution, whether they want it, which is another possibility. We could convey our interest in that to them. That's completely separate from giving, selling, conveying that property in which that stuff sits that we own outright to Argyle. We're getting our streams crossed. The two things really aren't related. They're in the same place, but they can be accomplished separately.
Okay, well, we should look at trying to handle both of those issues. Dan Shaw?
Yeah, well, just from what Roger said and what Bob just said, that the village used the intake on that same water line for this last summer. It seems like there's got to be a little bit of relationship there, because it sounds like they're still hooked to that as it's necessary to be used in an emergency. I think you got caught quite a bit of a spider's web here to untangle. And I think we need to keep pushing this and get it untangled.
I think the day Argyle comes to you and says, I'd like it, then you've cut through the Gordian knot, so to speak. There's no more tangle once Argyle says, I'd like it. You convey it to them, you retain your easement, you're done.
Why don't we send a formal letter to Argyle and ask them? I mean, instead of putting Bob on the spot, get a board action on the matter as far as well, thumbs up or thumbs down. I mean, I think we're being unfair to Bob to make him carry a message back and forth. If we're really formally considering disposing of that property, I think a letter ought to be sent to the town of Argyle or to the village and get a formal response back.
I saw your hand, Mr. Henke.
Yeah, I just wanted to make clear there are two lines coming into where that little building was. One that goes to the county and one that goes to the village. It's two different lines.
Matt?
All right, so just so I'm a little dense about this whole thing. So there's a piece of property up there that the county owns. There used to be a building there, it's gone now. There are two lines out of there. One goes to the village, one goes to Centers. And so Dan's idea is to divest ourselves of this by trying to get the water line to the village / town somehow, and the water line to the Centers to somehow turn that over to them and then get rid of the property and be done with this altogether? Is that where we're trying to head, Dan?
Well, yes and no, but there's also, you left out the other part. There's 7 more acres on the opposite side of the road that the wells set on that these water lines run through that we own. And the wells belong to the village or the town. Bob can explain all that. And that's all one parcel of property. I thought each side of that road, the building was setting it almost in the water over the bank of the road. Bob, fill them in. You're more educated on this matter than me.
Well, I believe the village has got a 99-year agreement to be able to put wells anywhere on that 7 acres that they want. I think they've got 3 or 4 up there now. Maybe, they were drilling pretty prolifically for a while there. So I thought that it would be probably a good thing in the long run to have that be in our jurisdiction anyway. It's not, the county can't really do anything with it because of that, drilling agreement until we're all gone. And I was kind of thinking maybe it should be a convey to the town instead of the village, given the rather tenuous position the village is in New York State right now. So that was where I was coming from. We're not, willing to put a whole bunch of time and money and effort into it, but it just seemed like the appropriate thing to do and to get the county off the hook for anything that went on up there.
So should we consider having Roger write a letter to the town and village that we'd like to convey that property?
Write it to the town.
Okay. Roger, could you take care of that, please?
Certainly, I can write a please buy my property letter. It's the most unusual thing one of the most unusual things I've ever done, but I can do that.
Mr. Half?
Bob, I imagine the pipeline from the lake to the village water tank also runs through other properties. Who has the easement? Who's responsible for the easement for that pipeline?
It's kind of a variable and interesting situation. There's some with the town and some with the village and some that don't seem to have any easements at all. It's not a really great system, but it was done back in the, end of the 1800s. So that's why.
Didn't we just recently, past year or 2 years ago, send some divers in there to clean the intake?
We need to again.
We need to again?
Yeah.
Whoa.
There's definitely issues. I say that we need to do something again. As of right now, I can tell you that the water flow to the centers is not good at all. And we have a couple landowners that are down through there. I've never seen the agreement, but we're supposed to be providing water to them off from this line. Roger might be able to speak to it more.
No, there's a huge difference there between supposed to be providing and allowing them to tap it. We don't have any obligation to any of those people. We've said they could tap it as it goes by, but there's no obligation to provide water to anybody but centers.
So as of right now, there is no water to wherever they have tapped in. So probably I can tell you this, as getting the calls from the landowners down through there, they're not happy because last year they didn't have water at their spigots. I don't know, if we need to send them letters or whatever, telling them that we're no longer doing it, or, I don't know where it is. It's kind of been messy since I've been here. But there is.
I wouldn't recommend sending a letter to somebody saying we're no longer doing what we didn't have to do in the first place.
Right.
How would you word that, Roger?
I would not word it. I would save my postage.
So where do we send the taxpayers when they're calling this off? I mean, where do we send them? I'm sure Bob has heard it, being
But I mean, the answer, Matt, is we don't have an obligation to provide you with water. We gave you the right to tap whatever goes through it. If we sell it to centers, right? And center says, I'm drilling a well, and you turn off the tap at the top of the hill, then we're done.
I'm good with any of it,
right? There's no obligation to put water through that, except
Are we
for the guy at the
obligated?
end.
Are we obligated to the centers to have the water flow to the pond?
Yes, I think we are at this point. And if it's not, then that would create a problem.
So does that intake provide water for anything else besides this line going down through?
Not that one. I believe that's the only thing it provides is to the center. To the
So
pond.
no matter what, unless we turn this over to centers, we'd still have to, we're still obligated to maintain that intake.
Roger shaking his head, yes.
Yes.
Yes, thought so. Okay. Dan
Matt, I'm talking about the pipeline that goes from the lake down to the nursing home.
Yes.
It passes through other people's property.
Yes, it
Those
does.
other people are allowed to tap into that pipeline, right?
Yes.
So it's just like the Colorado River. It doesn't go to the ocean. People are going to be sucking off that before it goes to the centers. There's nothing you can do unless you put in a much larger pipeline to increase water to the centers if people are sucking it out before it gets there.
The problem is the inlet is probably plugged again from the best we can tell. And it's out in the lake 100 feet, so it takes a dive team to go find it and try to unplug it.
We've never had a flow issue absent a problem at the intake.
Yeah.
That's been happening probably since that pipeline was put in. Apparently, by virtue of agreements, not even written that I've seen or anybody's been able to find, just that the flow's been adequate, and so they've allowed people to tap into it. Again, there's a difference between saying you can tap into whatever's there and I'm agreeing to provide you with a flow.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Dan, I'm getting back to your theory is we need to divest ourselves and get out of this whole thing. So if we give the 7 acres to the town and that provides that one line to the village for their emergency backup, what responsibilities legally, Roger, would we then have on the other pipeline going down to the nursing home? We can't at that point just walk away?
No, that's because we didn't agree with centers as to resolve that issue in the sale. Why, I don't know, but that wasn't part of the sale. So yes, we still have the obligation to run water down there, I believe, and so does the other attorney that's working on this.
But if there is no agreement addressed, then why are we responsible? If it wasn't addressed.
Right.
Why can't we just say, well, it wasn't addressed, and here you go. You've got to work it out with the town now.
I'd really like to have this folks talked about in executive session if we're going down this road. We're probably too far down it already, to be quite frank with you.
So,
We're too far down the intake pipe.
Well, not far enough, and it's getting more and more clogged as we talk, so.
should we sort of unclog this today and have some proposals for the next government ops meeting on how we handle this instead of trying to do this in a session like this?
Well,
Maybe Roger and Matt Jones and Melissa. Bob Hank. And Bob Hank get together and set up a meeting and discuss this through so we have proposals when we come and talk about this?
Well, once again, we're halfway down the road to speculation, because if Argyle says no, that's done. Okay, and if Centers says no, then we've got a very long negotiation to go into, and they've been notoriously reluctant to discuss it, probably for obvious reasons, with us in the past. So until we resolve those two issues, until somebody wants what we have and we can resolve the water pipe issue, and that's really all that has to happen. Somebody has to say, please give me or sell me. And then the other thing has to be resolved, the water pipe. We can come up with all the plans we want, but we need the other parties to tango.
You were going to talk to Larry.
I've already sent Larry an email asking him for an update.
Then we can reconsider this at the next government ops meeting.
And I'll send a letter to Argyle saying, please buy my property or take my property. Do my Henny Youngman impression.
Day and a half.
There's a third option Roger mentioned, abandonment of an easement. The easement doesn't serve the county anymore.
Yeah, I'd be careful. That goes back to I'd abandon the easement if Centers comes up with their own plan. Because then we won't need it.
Okay.
Or I'd convey it to Centers if they wanted it. Once again, though, that's a discussion that has to be had.
Okay, let's wait for next government's meeting, and Roger's going to get information from Larry, and we'll go from there. Okay? Anything else, Matt Jones?
Actually, I was going to bring up just a heads up that we are starting to plan for the parks again as of right now. We're probably going down the same road as we were last year at this time, looking for employees for lifeguards and et cetera.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Laura,
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Everybody should have received an email from Debbie regarding my annual report. I know Dave got one. If anybody else wants the official in a binder type thing, I can send that along. Read through that at your leisure. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at any time. Everybody should be able to get a hold of me, either via email or phone. I did want to point out one thing in there, and I talked a little bit about this prior, was the transfers, the number of transfers coming through Washington County. We are only down 58 transfers from 2019. So in the whole 2020 year, the transfers are still coming through, not quite as many in the last month or, this past month, but we are still pretty close to that 200 mark. So transfers, people are still buying and selling property. So that is that I just wanted to mention that to everybody. Like I said, if you have any questions on anything in the report, feel free to give me a call at any time. A couple other things I wanted to mention just real quick. Our office received a certificate for participating in the census. Heather Weller, my GIS specialist in our office, does work with the Census Bureau. We do some things for them. So we did get a nice little certificate in the mail. Right now, we just received an email that there is no date set for the release of the population of the housing unit numbers. They are talking about releasing the redistricting and apportionment numbers on September 30th, at sometime between April 30th and September 30th. But we don't have any updated numbers, which is also in my annual report, the census numbers. So next my annual report, You
I
probably
did
will have
that very
census numbers
fast.
in there. One thing I did want to mention is the boundary annexation survey. Some of the supervisors had stopped by. We are still doing that through our office for all the towns. So if you got notice from the census regarding that, we are still doing that here for you. Our GIS specialist does that. We are going to reach out to the villages because we don't have the okay from villages yet. That would just be a change in the boundaries. Happens very seldom, if at all, but that is something we're looking into. And the last thing I had was our Board of Assessment Review training. We have set a date for that for April 21st, which is a Wednesday. Anybody in your town that needs training from either last year or this year will receive a letter from my office right around the 1st of April saying we're having training, or maybe even earlier. We're having training. We're going to do a training at SUNY ACC. It will be live and virtual. So if people do not have internet, we are spacing people. Requirements through ACC, they do have space for us to space 50 people at least 6 feet apart. We won't have that many. There may be a few that if they don't have internet and they do want to come to ACC for that training, SUNY ACC, they are able to do that. So I just wanted to let everyone aware of that information. And that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Laura? John Roselle?
Yes, Laura, are you still in the process, or can we sign up for the shared service for assessors?
You can sign up anytime you would like. Your assessor has a term. If they were to leave at some point and resign and you would like to sign up for our shared services, give me a call. I can go over all that information with you. We can do that at any point, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Laura? Thanks for the report, Laura.
Thanks, Dave.
Congratulations on getting the recognition.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Anything else you have for us, Laura?
No, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Melissa,
Good morning.
good morning. Nice to have you on board with your first subject for government apps.
Thank you. And what a subject it is. So the New York State labor law has been amended recently, adding a new section, which is 27C. This section is entitled Duty of Public Employers to Develop Operation Plans in the event of certain declared public health emergencies. So the law is requiring that each public employer in the state of New York prepares a plan for continuation of operations in the event that the governor declares a public health emergency involving a communicable disease. The plan required by law must include some of the following, and I'll just kind of go over those so that you're aware what has gone into the plan. They're requiring a list of positions considered essential in the event of a state-ordered reduction of in-person workforce. They're also requiring description of protocols the employer will follow in order to allow for non-essential employees and contractors to telecommute. How the employer will stagger work shifts of essential employees and contractors in order to reduce overcrowding of the work sites. They would also like a protocol on how PPE will be procured for essential employees and contractors, as well as what protocols to follow to prevent spread or contraction of a disease in the workplace, and how the employer will identify sites for emergency housing for essential employees. The plan that you received is a draft plan that was put together so far. Once this plan is reviewed, it is required that the draft plan goes to the collective bargaining units to allow for comments and recommendations. That was done, I believe, the latter part of last week or the week before. So far, I have not heard any comments or recommendations from any of our unions. The plan is then required to be published by April 1st of this year. And a copy of the final version of the plan must be published in a clear and conspicuous location in the employee handbook and on a website, so it's accessible by the employees and the contractors. I did hear back from the Director of Public Safety. I have made a couple changes, kind of small changes, I believe, to the draft that you have in front of you now. Once I get the final recommendations and comments, I'll put a final plan together, and then I'll have that ready for the next board meeting to be adopted, and so we can be done by the deadline of April 1st. Are there any questions, or I don't know if you have on the plan at this point, but like I said, it's a work in process, but we will have a final draft done by the board meeting.
I know you, Debbie sent this out with the notice of the meeting. Did anyone have any questions or comments on this? Dana have?
I think I'll use that as somewhat of a rough template, but one size does not fit all. Emergency housing does not fit, but other things certainly would. I think having a plan that might be a little bit sparse is better than having no plan, because if you get audited, the first thing they're going to say is, where's their plan? If you have a plan, then they can criticize what's in it. But if you do not have a plan, you can probably get checked for not having a plan. So I think, many of our towns, Hartford, we've already kind of have lived through this a little bit. So we have a bit of an experience factor of what we already did. We'll just codify that into a plan.
Thank you, Dana. Matt Hicks?
So I hate to ask Melissa, I assume that all towns and villages need to have this plan in effect. Schools also by April 1st, right?
That's correct.
And so I had talked to Phil probably 6 weeks ago to say, hey, is there any way the safety officer can kind of help us put together a draft or an outline that we can all sort of use and go from there? But, I'll be the first one to admit I'm behind the curve. Does all the rest of the towns already have this ready to go? No. So if we don't, again,
I think some of the
I don't want
highway-
to touch it at all, but we haven't got to reinvent the wheel. I would think it'd be 90% of the plan would be applicable to all towns. Is there a way we can all work together to try to get this thing just to have something on file?
And I'd be happy to provide you with a template. That's kind of what I went off of when I worked on this plan. So I'd be happy to share that with all of you.
Please do.
Okay.
Lester?
I was going to say, I called the Association of Towns to get a template from them, and they sent me a few, and I've been working on it. They're about 13 to 18 pages long. I don't know how much of that is just fluff. You could tell a consultant did it because a lot of repetitiveness in it. But I think I got it from the Association of Towns and working on that. And Melissa's yours would probably be a lot shorter.
Sounds like it might be a little shorter. Yes.
With two employees, I think I could have a very short one.
Stay home.
Both are essential. Okay. Any other comments from Melissa? Bob?
Yeah, how does this differ from the plan we were supposed to have turned into the state for approval by February 4th?
Is that the same plan that I'm talking about now? Because I know there was a February 4th deadline for this plan, but it's supposed to go out to the unions by that date. Is it the same plan, do you think, or is it something else?
I thought it was a deadline for the plan being completed and submitted to the state for approval by February 4th. I could be wrong, but that's what we did, and, sent ours in.
You might be ahead of the ball.
Cassie?
Or did the completely wrong thing.
Or it's a different plan.
I want a copy of Bob's.
Well, we don't have ours done for the February 4th date, but we split it up. Our highway department did one, and of course he's more efficient than I am, so his is done, and I'm still working on the one for the office, but we've been working on it, shooting for the April 1st deadline.
Any questions? So where does this go from here? Do you need any action out of here today, Melissa?
I don't need any action at this point other than my intention is for it to go to the full board for the March board meeting to be approved then. And then I guess there's no, from what I understand, I can't see that I actually have to submit it to the state. I'll look into that a little bit further, but it's more or less has to be available for our employees and contractors to access.
Okay. All right, without any other comment, we will say thank you, Melissa.
Do you want to do a motion to forward it to the full board?
Oh, Debbie says we need a motion to forward this to the full board for approval. Motion by Cassie. Do I have a second? Thank you, Matt. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
Next order of business is Dana Half brought a question up on the rules of the board, and I'll let him state what he was looking for, or his question was, and see what changes we need to make, or if we need to make any at all. So, Dana?
I think it was to waive the rule that all resolutions must be submitted in writing. I think that does not allow any resolutions from the floor, which I'm a little bit opposed, because we amend resolutions all the time from the floor. We just call it an amendment. So what's the difference if you have an amendment to a resolution on the floor, or if you have a resolution from the floor? And I think if we have the same rule where you need a 2/3 weighted vote to waive the rule, I don't think we should hem in to only specific rules we're allowed to waive. If 2/3 want to waive the rule, we should waive whatever. I mean, we are the power, the legislative body. If we want to waive something, who's to tell us we cannot?
So Roger's just unblinked himself, so Brian first, he had his hand up.
Well, I would just say that from being here as long as I've been here, and I don't even know how long that is now, the biggest problem we've had is if you can't read something, you really don't know what you're voting on if you don't have it in front of you. And if you don't provide that to the board in writing, you got to see it some in advance. I mean, I like the idea if we could, do things on a dime. I'm not opposed to that, Dana. That'd be great. But at least when you amend it, you're just changing a line or something, and it's still the same concrete material that you're working on. Whereas if you just bring something and it's not in writing so everyone can read it, it's pretty hard to know what anybody's voting on. And if anything, that should be voted down just for coming at the last minute, not on its merit. The fact that nobody gets a chance to even review it. I guess that's where my concern would be. I think you have to give time for people to exactly absorb what's in some of these resolutions, because if you don't, we're really out of bounds there. That's just one.
Brian, if 2/3 say we want to do it and 1/3 says we don't, I don't think the minority should overrule the majority.
So I believe in my years here, we've had this happen a couple times. But in order to meet that, what we have done in a couple cases that I remember is we've actually had the language drafted, took a break from the meeting, had the language drafted, put the language out, and then voted on it. So do I remember that correctly, Deb?
Right, that's typically if you wanted one like that. But the rules do allow you, number 13 in the rules. And probably Roger is going to address that.
The two questions here are can you and should you?
Right.
Can you? Yes, you can waive any rule by a 2/3 vote. So if you want to do that, that's your prerogative. The should you, I'll leave to the rest of you. But the can you is yes, you can. But you can waive any of those rules by 2/3. You can waive the reading. You can waive that there be in writing. You can waive the mailing rules. All those things have been waived at various times.
So Matt?
Well, that's what I was going to address with Roger. First of all, when it's in writing ahead of time, it's a public document. It goes to the public, the agenda, and the public knows what we're going to vote on. If you just bring it up randomly off the floor, the public wouldn't know that's coming. And then they'll ask you a week later, I didn't know that was coming. I would have said something. I would have sent you an email. I would have shown up. I would have done this. It kind of cuts them out a little bit. But like you said, on number 13, if we really wanted to do that, we do have a function where 2/3 would allow that to happen and a resolution passed from the floor.
Well,
I'm not sure by fixing it, we're helping things. We're allowed to do it as it is.
A resolution can always pass from the floor. I think what Mr. Half's talking about is whether it has to be in writing. So anybody can bring a written and our past thing without notice can show up on the Friday of the board meeting with a written piece of paper. And if he can get 2/3 of you to vote to put it on the floor, it goes on the floor. That's been done, I don't know, multiple times since I've been here. But it's still done via a waiver. The question is, can somebody say, you know, sitting in their seat, I just want to resolve and let's not wait for it to be put in writing. And the short answer is, if 2/3 of you agree, then yes, you could. But it would take 2/3 of you to agree to do it in that format.
So my concern would be to have something orally put on the floor, and then someone come back afterward and said, I didn't realize this language is in here. I didn't understand it that way. I would much prefer to see the language in writing so that Noah can come back and say, we did it orally. I didn't understand what was in the resolution. Why not take the few minutes to step back, write it, and put it out there so people understand it? Because once we vote on it, we'd have to go back and undo it, to redo it, to correct what we didn't think was right. So in writing makes it very clear cut what we're voting on. Dana Half?
What I wanted already exists. Thank you, Roger.
There you go.
That was easy.
Okay. Easy discussion.
Gotta have at least one.
Easiest thing we did all day, right, Roger?
Nah, I'm never gonna say that again. No, sir.
Does anyone else have any other business? Dana Half?
I think we should enter into executive session for a discussion of acquisition of property.
I would like to defer that for before we have any. Al had his hand up, so I'd like to cover that before.
I thought that's what you meant. I'm sorry.
Well, I did that too, but Al had something I want to bring up.
No, I believe it's Mr. Half's issue.
John Rozelle? Did you have something?
Yes. Do we have any outlook on when we're gonna open up the DMV? To the public walk in, or?
I will defer to the chairman of the board and to the attorney. I think we're pretty well set for appointments until such point as the pandemic settles down. Is that correct, Sam?
Yes, currently, John, we have no authorization to do any other vaccinations other than what they provide us with the vaccine and tell us who we can do, like if it's a priority group 1B, or if it's a 65 and older, or if it's comorbidities. Those have been broken out. So it appears that we're not going to be, at this point in time, given anything other to do on those except the 1Bs. What you're finishing up on now are the 65s and over, given the second shots, and some of the 1Bs, but we haven't been given authorization by the State Department of Health or the governor's office to do any other types.
Is there any thought in the future when we can open up DMV to walk-in traffic without appointments?
I think that's a question for the county clerk, first of all.
Yes.
Quite frankly, that's her bailiwick. I don't know if she's anxious to do that, or if she thinks it's more efficient to maybe keep the way we're doing it now for longer. So I think you might want to have that discussion with her before you, because it's not really it's the chairman's choice in terms of coming into the building and everything by appointment, but she would be the one that would lift that sanction. If the chairman said we're not going to do appointments anymore, it's still up to the county clerk to lift that for that particular unit.
Well, has the state allowed that yet, Roger?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't think.
I don't. And with the spacing and the amount of space, the amount of room we have there, lines, that's probably one of the worst places in the building. We could develop anything resembling the lines we used to have there.
Melissa?
But again, that's her call.
Yeah. I'd be happy to reach out to the county clerk if you like and have that discussion with her to see, where her interests are or concerns.
Okay. But there, before we move on, is there any thought to going away from appointments for the rest of the building? Because every department requires an appointment, correct?
Yes.
Correct. At this point in time, no, it has not been determined. Based on the fact that our success rate, if you will, right now on keeping it out of the facility, we've been able to keep it contained when the viruses come in within departments. And we're still working under that concept, Dave.
Thank you. Dan
And Saratoga County is also ruled by New York State DMV, what they do, but I understand that Washington County is losing a lot of revenue to Saratoga County because somehow it's much easier in Saratoga County. I'd like to know what they do different. Is it just the general layout of the building that's the difference, or are they doing something other than what we are doing? But I'm concerned that a lot of our Washington County revenue is going to Saratoga County because citizens find it just too hard at Washington County.
Okay, John Rozelle?
I have received several calls on trying to get questions answered and such through DMV. And they're saying that their phone number that they call is never answered, or they've never get any return calls. I just wondered if anybody else has had that same problem.
Yes.
That has been an issue, John, and we'll discuss that with the county clerk again today then. We thought we had it resolved, but if it's still going on, then there's obviously an issue.
No,
Dan Shaw?
as far as yesterday, I had 2 calls come in.
Yeah. We'll discuss that with her today.
Dan Shaw?
Yes, I think this is the proper committee to bring it up. And I've had a couple of constituents ask me if we still under a state of emergency. And myself, I mean, I have no complaints at all with the leadership or how things are going. But what is, I guess what I'm trying to find out so I can answer this, when will the state of emergency be lifted? Is it something that the state determines? And maybe Sam knows this answer. And number 2, what is the need for state of emergency now if we have all of our protocols in order? And what would be the difference without a state of emergency? What is the different roles that we will be playing after the state of emergency? And I just need clarification. I'm not in any way having any issues with it. I'm trying to understand it.
No, I appreciate that, Dan. We renew the state of emergency every 30 days. And what that does is enables us to be in a position to tap any of the resources that may be available for under state of emergency orders from the governor.
Okay, so really that's the only role that the state of emergency has impacted our county government. The rest of it is as usual?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Jim, did you have a question?
No, I didn't have a question. I had kind of an explanation to Dana on why Saratoga County, DMV operates efficiently. They're number 1, they have 3 locations. 2 of their locations, one is in Clifton Country Mall and the other one is in Wilton Mall. So they're essentially located where massive foot traffic already is. And like I said, there's 3 locations. So without us having our satellite DMV in operation, it doesn't make it convenient for people. If you have to go to Target, if you have to go to Walmart, if you're over by the mall, it just makes it easier to stop into those county DMVs. You have to set an appointment up. It is by appointment only. There's no walk-ins, but it's just a convenience factor. And until we have our remote DMVs back in operation, I think you're going to continue to see people utilizing Saratoga County DMVs.
But they have 3 times our population. So by the time you include our people, they have even more.
I don't disagree with you, Dana.
People per pod or whatever you call that. But I have heard from people in my town that they have, out of frustration, they have gone to Saratoga County and were satisfied.
I used to go to Saratoga County as well. I try not to now. but I would walk in and it'd take literally less than a half an hour, where you can be over at the Washington County building for more than that waiting at the DMV.
I have to agree with Jim because Saratoga County is much more convenient for people, especially if you don't have big box stores or any good areas to shop. You go to Saratoga already and they're more convenient. And my God, are they way faster. It is a lot more convenient. If somebody goes there once, they're going to go there again.
Not if you live in the town of Hartford, it's not more convenient. And that's who I'm hearing from.
Okay, well, there'll be discussion with, conversation with Stephanie, and we'll go from there. Bring up the concerns. Brian?
And I'll remind you that I brought this up, well, a year ago now. We could possibly have a drive-through where people actually just wait in line in their car and go through. And we've looked into it, but I've yet to hear back from the person that does the lanes. And I know that would have to be approved by Albany, so I'm not sure it would ever get approved. But that would fit our situation very well here. Don't know if it would ever pay for itself. I mean, when you talk about Saratoga County and they have 3 offices, there's a cost for 3 offices. Just like there'd be a cost for us to have a drive-through. So it's all about service to your community and whether you want to pony up that kind of money and not know what the return is. And that's what scares me, is I don't know what the return would be. When this whole thing went down, the governor set this up for the state to get the revenue. That's how this was all closed down, was so that you'd go online and go through the state's website and he would get the revenue. That's what this is all about. And until that changes, or we have a way that people say, hey, that's a lot better than going to the state website, boy, this is a tough nut to crack.
I think also the outreaches we went out to the towns worked very well for people. But now we have the same thing in some towns, is that they're closed down to everyone by appointment only. So, it'd be a big coordination effort to also get people into away from the convenience of just walking in to get help during the period of time when the DMV is out there to set an appointment to get out there. They run into the same issues. So, but we'll have a conversation with Stephanie and go from there and report back. Matt Hicks?
I did read in the Times-Union, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that the New York Association of County Clerks has been lobbying very sternly with the governor's office to allow them to be part of the 1Bs so they can be vaccinated. A lot of the 1Bs are considered essential because they meet the public face-to-face, and so do DMV clerks. But as of yet, the governor's office has been very reluctant to allow them to be vaccinated as part of the 1Bs. That would be a change that could make a difference.
Brian?
I want to add one thing, too. I want to give Stephanie some credit here. She actually reached out to the state and took some of the workload because their website couldn't actually handle some of the stuff at Utica. So she actually took some of that work that was going through the state so she could get the revenue from it, as Dana was talking about. So, I want to give her credit for going outside the box and trying to make some of this happen, because they do have the drop box. They have, where you wait in line, the appointments and all that. But she's actually gone over and above that, and she deserves a little credit for that instead of just slapping, the way things have went with DMV. That's really not on our county clerk, the way this pandemic went down.
And also kudos to Stephanie, because she's made herself the front person out there and taken some of the aggravation from a lot of people walking in or talking about the delays. So she's taken that lead, so she would take that off her employees. So we deserve credit. She deserves credit for that also. Any other comments? Any other business before we move to the next step? John Rozelle?
I definitely wasn't aiming anything this at Stephanie. I just wondered if we could get things opened up. I agree, Stephanie's doing an excellent job.
Fair enough. It's a legitimate question. Any other business before we entertain a motion, go to executive session to Roger will tell us what we're doing it for.
Lost my cursor there for a minute. Discuss the acquisition or potential acquisition of real property.
Okay, entertain motion, go into executive session. Matt, do I have a second?
I'll second it. Paul.
Second by Paul Ferguson.